Account-based marketing platforms are really expensive, so I'm going to show you how you can use HubSpot to replicate a lot of the features that come with those more expensive platforms. The first thing I want to show you is the target accounts dashboard within HubSpot. So this is a built-in feature. If you go to contacts and target accounts, it will pull this up. Right now, I've got it set up with a bunch of different target accounts, but if you have not done that yet, you would choose your target accounts and then you can search for various ones. I've got something else to show you a little bit later on. If you don't know who your target accounts are or should be, there's some ways that HubSpot can help you figure that out. But within this dashboard, you can see we've got a total number of target accounts. We can see some other stats like accounts with open deals, the total value of those deals, and then some information on buying roles. So within your accounts, you can set contacts to be in buying roles as like a decision maker. So that's what these stats are. And then there's this table that's going to show you a lot of good information. It's got the number of contacts you have, the number of open deals, the value of those deals, the date of the last touch, which would be your outreach to them, and the date of last engagement, which is their interactions with you, and then any scheduled meetings. This is all demo data, so I don't have anything for any of this engagement data. But if you were to set this up in your profile and it was a live portal, then you would. You can also filter this list by a number of different options up here. So you can look at the owners, which would be your HubSpot users. You can also filter by teams if you have your users broken into teams. There's this option for ICP tier. So a tier 1 company would be your number 1 companies that you want to work for. There's probably only like 5 of them. You're super focused on getting deals there. They're like big logos that would make a big difference for you. Tier 2, it's kind of self-explanatory. They're going to be lower than tier 1. You're going to give them less personalization and attention, but still do a lot of good like personalization, probably doing some like 1 to few campaigns. And then tier 3 would be kind of everybody else within that target account list. Here you've got industry. HubSpot Company Insights is a feature they have that automatically pulls in information about companies. And one of those pieces of information is industry. So they get that information from Clearbit. It's relatively accurate, may not go as granular as you want it to if you're in a specific niche, but it's really good information that you just get for free automatically, no matter what tier you have. And then lastly is lifecycle stage. So this is going to be based on the company lifecycle stage, not the contacts. And I'll get into a little later how you might want to think about customizing your lifecycle stages. If you go over here to the sidebar, you can see there are some additional things you can check out, open tasks in your target accounts, all kinds of information here. But down here with find target accounts, you have some really good information about identifying accounts that maybe could be a fit to be a target account. I think the most interesting one is this website visits. So if we look at this website visits page, this is going to populate a bunch of anonymous website visit data. So it's going to show you the companies that are coming to your website, but not the individual contacts. There is some information you can see on the individual visit, but not who it is. So you can see here, it shows you the name of the company, the domain. You can see number of page views and number of visitors, which is really interesting because if you just have one person who is obsessed with your website, like that's fine. But if you have like this one, 65 different people that are visiting your website, that's a strong indicator that that company is really interested in you. You can see the date of the last visit, again, some of that HubSpot Company Insights information. And then here's information about that specific visit. So you can see this visit came from organic search. They use Google to find us. There's going to be some other options here. So this is all pulled from those default HubSpot source values. Also within this website's visits dashboard, you can filter to find companies that fit your ICP. So if we add a filter here, there's a bunch of different options you have. You could set a revenue range and an employee range to gauge kind of the size of the company and look at specific countries or cities if you're looking for kind of a more localized approach, industries, really all kinds of data here that you can filter by and really narrow this list down instead of being, pages and pages and pages to just things that you might actually be interested in. And then once you have a good list here identified, you can click this plus button and it will add that account. Once you have your list of target accounts, then you're going to want to start thinking about where they are within your funnel. Here, I've gone to the lifecycle stage settings for companies. And weirdly, you can't edit company lifecycle stages within the company settings. You can see here you have to go to the contact lifecycle stage settings. So clicking over to the contact lifecycle stages, there's some options up here that you can set or unset depending on your preferences. This first one is sync lifecycle stages. That is going to update all of the contacts lifecycle stage whenever their company's lifecycle stage changes. I really don't like this setting because I think you can have a different level of engagement with different contacts within the same company. So I always recommend keeping that unchecked and then making sure that your company lifecycle stage stays in sync with the contact who is furthest down the funnel. And I'm going to show you some workflows that'll help you automate that. This setting allows you to change the lifecycle stage when a contact is created. You usually will want that to be the very earliest stage. In this case, it's stranger. I'll go through the definitions of what each of these are in a minute. And then we have two different settings for what happens with deals. So when a deal is created, any contacts or companies that are associated with that deal will be set to opportunity. I'd recommend turning that on. It doesn't change it for all contacts at the company, just the ones that are associated with that specific deal. And then this is another one that I would turn on. If a deal becomes closed won, then you're going to set the lifecycle stage of that company and the contacts to customer. Now we've got all of our different lifecycle stages down here. So you can customize these to fit your business, but here are some stages that I recommend. That this is just kind of how I think about lifecycle stages at both the account and the contact level. So a stranger would be a company that may or may not have any idea that you exist. There's no evidence that they've been to your website. They haven't engaged with your marketing or sales team at all. There's pretty much no contact whatsoever either way. A visitor would be a company that has been to your website in some measurable way. They've interacted with your marketing, they've visited a website page, maybe they've even talked to sales, but that would probably put them further down on the list. A hot lead would be somebody that has reached some sort of threshold of engagement. So you could do that through account scoring, through form submissions. It's really kind of up to you how you define what makes somebody a hot lead. But the idea is that marketing is then passing them off to sales. You can kind of think about this as like an MQL, but when it comes to account-based marketing, I don't like using that terminology because it creates an expectation that you're going to drive a certain volume of MQLs. Whereas with account-based marketing, I think you should really be focused on more of an account level metric. The rest of these are kind of self-explanatory. We've got opportunity, which means that a deal has been created, and then customer, which means their deal has been closed won. Now, within all of these stages, you not only want to think about what qualifies somebody to enter them, but also what would qualify somebody to exit them. I think lifecycle stages are not a one-directional street. It is something where people could move up or down the funnel. So if we're thinking about an opportunity, by definition, that's somebody who is associated with a deal that's been created. But if that deal was created a year ago, and there's been no movement since then, it's become closed lost, and there's not really been any interaction, then they shouldn't be still considered an opportunity. They should move back up probably to visitor and then reevaluated until they become hot lead, and then hopefully eventually move back into that opportunity stage when another deal is created. Same with customer, especially if you have more of a transactional business. Someone buys your product and then they don't buy it again for 6 months, a year. Should they really still be considered a customer? Probably not. They should probably move back up the funnel. So with all of these, you want to think about that kind of time bound. What makes sense as an amount of time that they should be considered to stay in that stage? You can automate some of this via workflows. So here is an example of a workflow that would set the lifecycle stage. So this is looking at an individual contact and what their lead score is. If it reaches a certain value, then we're going to put them into that hot lead lifecycle stage, and we're making sure that we are not changing it if they're further along in the funnel. This workflow is really important for keeping your company lifecycle stage matched up with the contact who is furthest down the funnel. So the idea of this is you may have 5 different contacts within a single company. 4 of them are strangers, but 1 is a hot lead. Then you want the company lifecycle stage to be hot lead. You don't want it to stay further back than it is. You don't want it to be too far forward if somebody moves further back in the funnel. So this is going to enroll companies every single time any contact that's associated with them has a lifecycle stage change. It's going to look at the updated lifecycle stage of that contact, and then based on that, it's going to check it against the lifecycle stage of the company. Lastly, I want to talk about reporting. I think reporting is a big shift that companies have to make when they're switching into an account-based marketing program. So a lot of these reports are going to be focused on that account level information instead of looking at individual contacts, individual leads. So this first one, we can see our target accounts by lifecycle stage. And I've got this broken down from the ICP tier that we talked about in the target accounts dashboard. So the idea here is you should see the widest bar move further down the funnel. When you start, you're probably going to mostly have strangers that are your target accounts, maybe some visitors, hot lead or two. But as you expand your ABM program, you want to see more and more visitors, hot leads, opportunities, and customers, fewer strangers. And that's how you kind of know that you're doing your job well, because you're moving people through this funnel. You can also look at the customer lifetime value or the total revenue from your target accounts. So this is just taking a look at the top accounts by their customer lifetime value across multiple deals. We have a report over here that is showing active deals at target accounts. So you can monitor what's going on with those deals that are most important for your business. And then down here at the bottom, I've got a number of metrics that are kind of showing penetration within your accounts. So here is the number of target accounts with contacts. That is going to be that transition from stranger to visitor. You want to have contacts at all of your target accounts. So moving that needle into the green is going to be really important. And then you can see here, we have a very low number of accounts that have decision makers. So we would want to increase that if we want to have a chance to close more deals. And then this last one, we've got the number of target accounts that have deals. And this is counting both open deals and closed won deals. So what you really want to see is that needle move all the way over, and you've either got an active open deal or they're already a customer for all of your accounts. Using these features, I think you can definitely create a viable, scrappy ABM program just using HubSpot and incorporating and integrating ad platforms like LinkedIn or Facebook or Google through HubSpot's ads manager. Don't think you need to pay for really expensive ABM software until you have kind of built the foundations within your CRM and then scaled it up to the point where you're starting to strain the capabilities. That being said, I think HubSpot's capabilities are going to continue to improve. HubSpot recently acquired Clearbit. So they had already been incorporating some of Clearbit's data in the form of those HubSpot company insights. But I would imagine that once this acquisition is complete, there's going to be a lot of Clearbit functionality that's going to start getting built into HubSpot. And that's going to help you with enrichment. You might even be able to get some good intent signals from it. So that's only going to add to HubSpot's ABM capabilities. If you enjoyed this video, or if you're considering building an ABM program of your own in HubSpot, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.